Welcome everybody to the inPackaging podcast. Today we have a very special guest, Jesse Dixon. Jesse is a father, husband, ex-rock and roll drummer, which we will get to, and vice president of strategic sales for GPA Global. Introduce my friend Jesse. How are you doing today, man?
Doing great, Billy. Stoked to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh man, we are so excited, and just what you guys are doing at GPA and your company and your brand and what you're doing. We really just want to get you on here and talk all about cannabis packaging. But before we get into it, man, who are you? How'd you get into the cannabis packaging space? What led you to GPA Global? And hit on this ex-rock and roll drummer for a minute, if you can.
Well, first, we're honored to be here, or I'm honored to be here. Thanks for having me, man. It's really sweet to see you and chat. And full transparency, this is my first podcast, so I'm a newbie and excited about this opportunity. I really appreciate it, man.
Well, it's okay, man. We're new at this too, and but here's the thing: progress is better than perfection. So let's just keep moving forward.
Yeah, you got it. So, gosh, how did I get to GPA?
Yeah.
Why cannabis packaging?
Yeah.
I've been in packaging for the better part of 12, maybe 15 years, somewhere between 12 and 15 years. Started with home entertainment packaging, working with the movie studios out here in LA, doing box sets for various releases, whether it's a Harry Potter collection with all the movies and on Blu-ray with, tchotchkes and maps and books and all the fun stuff, or a Breaking Bad, release where it's a barrel and you open it up and there's all your Blu-rays and little trays that look like they're used to cut up drugs.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of collector's edition packaging, but once that started to become a little bit more digital or end up in the cloud, started realizing that retail packaging was less important in that sector. And I was working with some brands out here in LA that were doing some cannabis work and needed some packaging, and got dialed in with them and saw that as an opportunity, as well as something that I gravitate towards and have a passion for. I think it's a beautiful plant with a lot of great attributes. So started working with some of those clients, realizing, man, until somebody can download a high, that needs great packaging, and it's going to be at the brick and mortar level in stores, and was excited about what it meant to turn things that weren't child resistant into child resistant packaging.
Yeah,
component to it. So that was a huge passion and something exciting for me, taking what I learned working with the studios and in other packaging sectors and translating it to what we do here. So skipped a few steps, but it got in with GPA. Long story short, my dad's been in packaging for the better part of 55 years. I fought it tooth and nail. I decided to rebel and join rock and roll bands and travel the country and got to travel the world a little bit on a cowbell driven adventure.
That's awesome.
Yeah, no, it was great, man. It was in throughout my 20s and early 30s, I got the opportunity to see some great places and play in some really great bands. But then I met my wife, wanted to slow down a little bit. My father was in Asia working, and I flew out to meet him and met these guys that were GPA and got to know them. And without getting too deep into it, my father got a little sick while I was there, hence why I went out to visit and helped him recover from an illness he was having. And the guys at GPA were taking care of him, and they just quickly became family. It was a 50-person company at that point. Joined as I was leaving Asia. My dad looked at me and said, "Hey, man, it's clear that I could use your help."
Yeah. Hey,
I think you met Julia and you're excited to settle down and start a career. What about these guys? I was like, these guys are the coolest. It's like, well, why don't you work with them? And started to get to know them and work with them, just doing some light account management, more or less a glorified personal assistant, and then grew into a bigger account management role, and then helped GPA kind of grow and establish their presence here in the States, and grew into a business development role and then a leadership role. And 10 years later, here we are with a great USA presence and a focus on the cannabis packaging sector.
Yeah, and kudos to you, man, because you had some fun in your 20s and 30s, and then got married, man, and have a beautiful daughter, right?
Yeah,
daughter as well.
Daughters.
Likewise, yeah. And I think that's really cool that you have an opportunity to work with your father, but also build the business. Like it wasn't just handed to you; it was you built this from brick by brick. And here's the thing: what nobody keeps talking about is everybody knows about cannabis, but it's still federally illegal, right? Which is wild. But here's the thing. In the next 5-10 years, you're probably going to see it become legalized, right? Maybe. I definitely, and you guys are in a really good spot. So, let's get right into it. So GPA, the focus is on cannabis packaging solutions right now, this specific sector. So what do you see the forecast for cannabis packaging in 2023? And how was it in 2022? Because it was like the green rush, like over the last 5 years minus. In the COVID year was growing, but so 2022, is that like stabled at all? Or maybe like dropped a little bit, and then how's the forecast looking for the space in 2023?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. There's two camps. I think the reality was 2022 was a down year to 2021. I think a lot of our clients experienced significant pains. The economy took a little bit of a turn. Inflation is real. I think it's hard to go and buy a $12 pre-roll when folks are struggling to pay for gas or groceries. It's just a reality of the climate. And it had peaked, and I wouldn't say peak, that's not the right word, because I think the best is ahead of us. 2020, 2021, it was just gangbusters. Everyone was jumping in, people were throwing money at it. A lot of people were irresponsible in the way they were doing that. A lot of great companies were doing what they needed to do to grow their businesses. And then 2021, it turned a little bit. But I think a lot of the good companies and the companies that had a good foundation are doing just fine and looking forward towards a great 2023 and 2024. I'm super optimistic. Like I said, I think, the best is ahead of us. And, we're really excited. We didn't experience really that many pains with 2022. Our business has continued to grow. And, I think it's because we have a focus on customer service and account management. And without making this too much of a sales pitch.
Because you just mentioned continue to grow it. And I think this is recent, is you were mentioning something on one of our conversations like a few weeks ago, like, hey, something might be going on down the road. And I think I just saw literally like yesterday, like there was an acquisition made.
Yeah. So we look at opportunities or times, when other people see issues or problems or experience challenges, those generally are treated like opportunities here at GPA. And truly, there's always a silver lining. And we were able to turn that and use a focus on in-region and onshoring as much manufacturing as possible. So yeah, thank you for bringing it up. Last week, we closed a year-long acquisition on Janko Productions, a phenomenal facility in both San Bernardino, so just southeast of Los Angeles, but also in Mexico. So we've got our first truly owned asset in Mexico. We've had a team in Guadalajara for some time, and we've been using Mexico-made manufacturing for quite a bit. But actually, to own it, to be able to control it, it's phenomenal. It's great to add to the arsenal of what GPA is doing, and on many different levels. Bringing as much manufacturing close to where the product is produced is incredibly important. From sustainability, a cost, and a lead time perspective.
It's interesting. So from what I'm hearing from you, especially it sounds like, again, talking about challenges and opportunities, is the greatest companies take their the greatest opportunities are in those challenges, right? Because if your organization, who's a global organization who's consistently to grow, right? Because not all the revenue for GPAs in cannabis packaging, right? So you guys have of course, right? But here's the thing: is every company in cannabis packaging is probably having these type of challenges, right? This is where market share is gained, and really companies are able to separate, because again, the industry's not slowing down. You still have 40 something states that even have to make it medical, right? Yeah. And who's going to support them, right? To my knowledge, a lot of cannabis packaging manufacturers are quote unquote glorified marketing agencies. Nothing against any of the companies that we may have worked with before that do cannabis packaging, but they are working with they're partnering with companies like you to manufacture their products, right? Yeah. So what are you seeing that separates some of if you're a top packaging cannabis company, what's separating if you're trying to enter the cannabis packaging space, whether you're sales role or you're just trying to break in, what should you be looking for in joining a cannabis packaging organization?
Yeah, that's interesting. You had mentioned and touched on it that there's a lot of glorified marketing agencies, and some of them are doing phenomenal work. And I hate to use the word broker, but a lot of distributors. There's a lot of buying and reselling. There's a lot of companies that started. There's this boom, right? There's this boom. Everyone saw this opportunity for cash grab and started these companies to service this sector. What I think about folks looking to get into this business or working with companies that provide packaging in the sector is, a lot of the companies that I find that do well, and I'm proud to be a part of one, is understanding packaging and being packaging well before the cannabis boom, right? Being able to manufacture packaging, if you can manufacture packaging for Disney or Diageo or Sony, or Ring doorbell, you can take those same practices, whether it's color management, quality control, quality assurance, and understanding of supply chain, and take that and translate that to making a vape cartridge box, right? It's not different. Packaging is packaging. Yes, there's a child resistant component, but we've been working with packaging for a very long time that has some kind of opening and closure. So, I think that's something that's a little unique to the sector, that it is incredibly littered with folks who are buying and reselling. And you said some of these companies work with folks like us. Unfortunately, we don't work with them. That was part of our business model early on, is we want packaging. We wanted the IP for our child resistant packaging to be proprietary GPA. So that way we go to our clients and say, hey, here's your child resistant box for your vape cartridge. And we're the only person that's going to sell you this. You're not going to get it from 4 or 5 other people. And it makes for a unique experience and a better customer service model. So something that we've stood behind. And like you said, it's all about market share, and we're looking to grow and become market leaders and best in class in this particular sector.
So this is a question that I've always wondered, because I think that is just like when you go to like pill bottles, like when I was growing up, right? I'm not going to age myself, but you would have like the old Tylenol bottles, right? Like it would be easy. And then they had like, you had to push down and then turn it, right? So obviously, like you probably should, because if there's somebody, like say your edibles or gummy, right? Last thing you want is your 2.5-year-old easily opening something. So talk more on that, like the child resisting, because I think that's extremely interesting, right? So is that like a major priority or one of the top priorities when you go into a new project or any sort of new packaging, that, hey, before we really even test it or look at anything, like it has to be child resistant?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, particularly to cannabis packaging. Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of things that we've developed in conjunction with our clients, and then we validated it, made it child resistant, and then started manufacturing and did all the appropriate testing. And then there's items that we developed specifically for the market and then offer to a client base. So, sometimes we're going to a client who has a particular need and say, oh, this structure would be great for you. It's child resistant and it fits the product line. Let's say it's gummies, for example, or working with a client for something that's completely unique and going through the whole development process to make it child resistant, which is my favorite part of the job, is the inventing. It's the development side, but it's always first and foremost, and usually at the tippy top of every conversation we have with clients.
Yeah, it's the cannabis packaging space is because packaging is already niche. It's $1 trillion niche sector that is as recession proof as you can get. Like everything around you, from your drywall to your cups to your windows, came in some sort of packaging. I was just talking to somebody earlier. The only way you're not going to get around some of packaging is if you're literally wearing no clothes and you're in the middle of the desert. Like, because even your shoe, your socks, right? So where do you see some needs? Because obviously this is growing. When I think of cannabis packaging, I think of like the gold rush era, like everybody initially wanting to get in it, right? And then they all got in it, and then guess what? Like there's still gold, but a lot of it's already taken by these big players that have been in it for a minute, right? While the companies that were really making a lot of money during that time were the individuals selling like the panning equipment, right? Like, hey, oh, you want to go look for the gold, right? Well, here's some pans to go find it. And you see that now in like these grow areas, these other sides of cannabis. But packaging seems like a great opportunity for companies to still grow if they have the in-house manufacturing, if they have the distribution, if they have so what do you see that the cannabis packaging space is like lacking right now? Some companies that are lacking. And then the inverse of that, like what do you see the needs are for cannabis packaging space going forward? Clarity even maybe, or?
Yeah, no, I think the cannabis sector is lacking reliable vendors. And again, I work alongside some amazing companies, and I actually don't believe in competition. I think there's enough for everyone to play a role as long as they're servicing the sector well and not degrading what it means to be a packaging provider. So, reliable vendors, man, people who, do what they say they're going to do, without saying names. We've got a client and somebody or a couple folks that I very much look up to, that has something called the say-do ratio. And they're always saying, hey, Jesse, how's our say-do ratio? Are you doing what you say you're going to do? And I think the reasons why they developed that is probably working with folks who don't do what they say they're going to do. So for me, having 100% say-do ratio is incredibly important. And I find that there's a lot of folks in this sector that don't do that and make Asia-based packaging something that is incredibly negative, which it's not. do you have the infrastructure to support, global manufacturing? Do you have the ability to move manufacturing from one part of the world to a different part of the world to support your client base? For example, right now, we have a manufacturing facility we bought last year in Poland, and we're starting to investigate what would it look like if we made some of our child-resistant packaging in Poland to service the East Coast market? And what does it look like if we lean a little heavier into our Mexico and Los Angeles-based manufacturing to service, clients west of the Mississippi? It's, I think what cannabis brands out there are looking for are proactive partners, not people that just, take an order and deliver a product. That's, that's waiting tables. It's someone who's suggesting and saying, hey, you know what? This is the dish you really want to try, and I think it's what you're looking for, and this is why. And being a part of their supply chain, we like to think that we're not just partners, but I consider myself an employee of a lot of our clients, because we help make decisions, we help plan, we help suggest things, and sometimes they really make a difference because everyone's busy, especially in the sector. They're sprinting a million miles an hour. So whatever we can do to play a leadership role and a support role, that's the foundation of our business, and I really think it's what the sector's lacking.
From what I hear, that I just hear from you, be service-driven, people-focused. And I think that is really, to your point too. Yeah, like there's a lot of let's call it collaboration, not necessarily competition, but you have to be able to serve the market, right? If they're not able to serve, you will be more than happy to service and look to help that client, right? Yeah. So I think that's interesting. Let's circle back to the Asia packaging, because I don't know much. I know a lot of companies that utilize, like they'll import, for example, right? Sure. And I know that the typical person may, oh, come on, well, like, to be honest, most stuff around you is already made in China, right? But what do you think the main crux of that is why do people say, oh, I don't want to get my packaging from China? Like, what's the downside right away? Because from what I hear is, I hear quality, I hear consistency, I hear innovation, I hear global outreach, I hear I can go where my customer is.
Yeah. No, you know what? Everyone has their own reasoning, right? Whether it's politically driven or, look, there's some real supply chain challenges, particularly, through the aftermath of a year or a couple of years of COVID regarding container pricing and port congestion, and very good reason for people to really want to focus on moving packaging stateside, and happy that companies like, GPA were able to do that. But then as, the ports clear up and container prices go back down, there's this other option, this other way to service our clients with maybe a global approach, a dual manufacturing approach, where you're doing some stuff in Asia based on costs with longer lead times, and then you're supporting with in-region production, even if the cost of packaging is a little bit more expensive to meet immediate needs. So, Asia's been the supply chain leader for, I don't know, what, 50, 100 years. So it's
been a minute. Yeah,
it's been a while to say, you know what, I don't want to buy my packaging from Asia anymore. Sure, I support that decision for folks who feel that that's important, but they're a very important part of how our world, imports and exports goods, and how our economy moves. So, cutting them out entirely isn't realistic. But with that said, we really do believe in producing packaging as close as possible to where the product is produced. So, it makes sense to produce a headphone box in Asia if the headphones are produced in Asia, and you send that box to the headphone factory, they toss the headphones in the box, they ship it together as one complete unit.
It comes down to cost. So completely agree with you. So I want to take a little pivot and talk kind of like sustainability, because I know that is the biggest buzzword right now. You have a lot of greenwashing going on out there in the world. So before we get into the greenwashing, we're going to tease the audience for a second. The sustainability component, is that an important, is that come into play with your team over at GPA? Is that important to have a sustainable product? And I guess, what does that mean to you and your organization?
It means a lot to us. Yes. And it is something that is very important to us. GPA was started as green packaging. Literally, green packaging was named because of a sustainability movement that our Asia division was doing to help rid a client of some significant PVC plastic issues. So, it's 1000% in our DNA. Green packaging then became Green Packaging Asia, which then, as we started to expand out of Asia, just became GPA Global. So it is incredibly important to our organization, and greenwashing is real. And sometimes people don't know how to address sustainability because it's kind of an ambiguous word with different meanings for different folks. However,
it says, completely agree with you.
There aren't things that are ambiguous. Recyclable depending on what part of the world you're talking about, is very specific. Degradable, is specific, or some version of compostable, whether it's landfill or, home compostable or industrial compostable. There's very specific requirements. So people throw out the words a little willy-nilly, and definitely something that we try not to do, and actually put data and statistics behind the sustainability initiatives we have. And, there's very tangible ways to address sustainability, whether it's at the warehouse level. That's really important for us. It's something that's usually neglected or is an afterthought. How do we manage our usage of water and power? Are we producing close in regions so we don't have a lot of carbon just from shipping boats across the world? There's a huge amount of sustainability efforts put into getting things from one place to another. So producing child resistant boxes here and then shipping them or just trucking them, a state away is significantly better than bringing them over on a boat. So, it is something that's very important to us, something that's very near and dear to my heart. I work out of a printing facility. So right outside my window, which you can't see, are a bunch of printing presses and a lot of paper. And we have initiatives for how much paper we use and ways for measuring how much carbon we put into the air, and then we offset it. We can, plant some trees or use, responsibly forested paper with FSC paper stock, avoid the use of single-use plastics. There's just so many different ways to tackle it. But I think this industry benefits from the folks who actually have the experience doing that.
Yeah. And I think one of the tough things is how do you, you made a really good point, because I think a lot of people, when they hear sustainable, they only think of like boxes and packaging.
Yeah.
They're not thinking about, hey, if I make this here and transport it here, this is the impact compared to sending it on a boat. Right. Yeah. So, and that's really cool that those decisions actually get made. Because again, profits in organizations are important, because without generating any sort of profit, the companies can't, sustain themselves. But you guys seem to be putting your purpose up there pretty high. So
what point too, and sorry to cut you off, is that there's this misconception, and sometimes not a misconception, but I think overall a misconception that Mother Nature has to be expensive. And it really doesn't. There's ways to tackle sustainability goals and eco-friendly packaging without increasing the price. And I think
it wasn't expensive for thousands of years. So I agree with you. Yeah.
There's just so many different ways to address sustainability and help clients with one of their biggest goals. And that is to, buy things as least expensive as possible and make as much profit as when they sell their products. So, making cost-effective, eco-friendly packaging is at the forefront of everything we do.
So how do you validate how do you validate some of these sustainability claims? Like, how would you, because greenwashing is a problem, because you have, especially, who's going to be the person that says that's not sustainable? I see it. I listen to podcasts and I listen to packaging podcasts, and some people are talking about their products and they think it's sustainable. And I've heard podcast hosts be like, well, that's not a sustainable product, right? But they're marketing as is, but nobody's checking them.
Yeah, you test it. There's agencies and organizations and third-party, groups that come do tests for that kind of stuff, and in-house testing. We do things that are reports that are called life cycle analysis, or LCAs, that literally show the amount of energy, water, power, carbon produced when you make a particular product. There's ways to measure that. As far as our group goes, we have a sustainability director and we have a giant sustainability team that all day, every day focuses on that. Can we use a varnish instead of a lamination? And can the varnish be water-based instead of oil-based? So that way, when the packaging ends up in a landfill, it actually degrades. Yeah, absolutely. You can do that. And is the varnish that much more expensive than a matte lamination, which essentially is plastic? No.
See, that's an important point, because but that even comes down to the life cycle of when you purchase those machinery. Because some of these companies may have made those machine purchases 20, 25 years ago, right? And they bought the machines that are alcohol-based ink, so they have solvent, everything, and now they have to convert it, but then they have to spend $4 or $5 million to get a brand new machine, but they're like, I'll just keep it, right? But so I agree. They need to put more impact into that. I want to take a little pivot here. So let's talk, because we have some people watching this. I can tell that I can definitely say this is probably going to be an episode we're going to get a few listeners, because people just love cannabis packaging. They love the topic of cannabis. I have friends and people that, we the company that I run, we do recruiting for the packaging space, right? And we talked about a company that we're partnering with that we do packaging, cannabis packaging for. And I got people saying, hey, I'd love to work in that space. And it's like, hey, how do you enter? So if you're somebody, right, because this space is still in the infancy, right? You probably have a lot of companies that want to jump in, but if you're somebody that not necessarily want to join a GPA, but what is some advice that you would give somebody looking to transition into the cannabis packaging space? Where do you go? Where do you start? How do you get into this space?
Yeah, you contact this great recruitment firm called Spark Packaging.
Yeah, there we
go. No, shot.
That's not an ad, by the way. Not an ad.
Yeah.
But we'll take it.
Eat your Wheaties. Look, it's packaging. Don't jump into cannabis packaging. Don't say you want to get into cannabis packaging. I love cannabis packaging. Say you want to get into packaging. I think one of the biggest misconceptions that we work in cannabis. I do not. And there's a lot of people who want to get into the cannabis sector and the cannabis packaging sector. I work in the packaging business. Come into packaging.
Amen.
The vertical you focus on, awesome. Do it, man. But you got to understand packaging first and foremost. And there's a lot of companies, without naming names, that came in and said, the only thing I'm going to focus on is how to buy a child-resistant jar and sell that. Well, then are you really learning anything about packaging? No, you're learning about a single product. You're not learning the equation that goes behind using the calculator, right? So, if I were jumping into packaging now, I'd start as a pressman. I'd get at every level. And maybe if that's not the path you could take or want to take, get into planning, production, account management well before you start looking at business development. You got to understand how the sausage is made to really understand the sausage. And, I think I'm incredibly excited by this sector. Look, cannabis packaging is it for me. I love doing the home entertainment stuff. But when I found cannabis packaging, started working with some of the clients that I got to work with early on, I found a passion for this. It is everything to me. It's probably my second love.
Yeah.
And I would encourage anyone to get into it, but understand you're getting into packaging.
That's a big phase. That's a big thing because packaging is, and the part of this conversation, we're talking a lot in cannabis packaging, but I think some people will say, oh, I want to get into cannabis packaging because they might love marijuana. They might like cannabis, but guess what? You still got to work and you still got to drive for that business now. And what you're saying is important because there's folding carton printing. You have pulp molded. I'm seeing molded fiber jars now, right? Yeah. You have to understand glass. It's not just, hey, dude, I've been, somebody's like, hey, I've been smoking marijuana for 15 years. I've been working my professional level job. I just want to pivot because I want to be around cannabis. No, it's not necessarily that, right? Yeah. You're serving that sector. And I think that's sometimes, and that's a really good point. So now the inverse of that, say you're a cannabis company out there and that you make pre-rolls or you manufacture products, but you're looking for a cannabis packaging partner, right? Because there's probably, you type in cannabis packaging on Google, there's going to be so many, it's just when you type in what to buy my wife as a stocking stuffer, she's going to hear this. You see, it's just so many things, right? I did do that. So babe, this is after Christmas. You'll watch this. You'll see, but there's, what do you do? What would you recommend a cannabis company out there when they're reaching out to their cannabis packaging vendors or new vendors? What are some questions that they should ask a potential production partner before investing in a relationship to ensure that you're making the right decision? Because to your point, there's a lot of companies out there that say, hey, I'm just looking for jars, but that you shouldn't just do that, right?
Yeah, I think it's important to vet the reliability. I think I mentioned that earlier. Understand the financials of the partner. Come to me and ask me, how big is your company? How many clients do you serve? What's your exposure look like? And I love answering that question. I love telling people that Diageo is probably one of our biggest accounts. If not, we started with Ring Doorbell, got them to, where they were to get purchased by Amazon and continue to work with them. We get to work with Disney, and to get Disney certified, which is called FAMA certification. It's near to impossible. So, are you working with someone that can have the same certification to service a box for Mickey Mouse? Well, that person can do your Mickey Mouse box. They can do your vape cartridge box, right? So are you ISO certified? Do you even understand what GMP means? Really, do you have a color management system? What does your QA, QC process look like? Show me some case studies. I know people in the sector, they don't have a lot of time. The amazing folks that work in procurement and supply chain at these cannabis companies, gosh, they're working a million miles an hour and they're working so hard. So it is truly hard to vet some of the folks that come to you looking to support your business. And that's where I get a little frustrated, because there's folks that are coming in and disservicing the sector. And you Google, like you said, you'll see a gazillion, most all with some kind of pun for a company name that has to do with cannabis, right? You know, I think just really try to understand, does your partner have experience, in cannabis packaging, of course, but outside of that? And how does that infiltrate? How does that influence what they do for you in cannabis packaging? And, you know, what is their business model? Is it a buy, sell business model? Is it a dual approach? Some buy, sell, some directly manufacture. How do they plan to control increase in material costs? And how do you know they're going to be there next year, so you don't have an order that doesn't show up because, you know, a company folded shop or decided to sell off their packaging division? You know, there's people who need their jars, you know, and you got to make sure you get it to them. You know, how do you find someone that gives you confidence? And that's what we're doing. We're instilling confidence and through action and less through words. But it's hard. Sometimes we have to show people who we are because everyone says who they think they are.
So I think I want to pause there, and I want the audience to possibly like go back and replay the last like 2 minutes of that. That was like a 2-minute masterclass answer. So like if you're currently working for a cannabis company and you're in purchasing and you want to know exactly what you should be asking, those are the questions that. And even here's the thing: what's interesting? Maybe you're not looking for a new partner. Maybe you have a current partner that you've been working with for a couple of years, right? And you know, the best marriage is you need to continue to make deposits into that relationship, right? Because if you don't date your husband or your wife or your partner, that you're not going to bear the fruits of that relationship, right? Same thing here is like, you can go back to your current partners and be like, hey, let's talk about the last couple of years, right? So listen to what Jesse just said in those questions, because those are literally things that you can ask your current companies that you're partnering with right now on. And maybe you're in the process of looking for new partners, and maybe Jesse and his team could be one of those. But or, you know, always do your due diligence, right? Ask the same companies the same questions and really narrow those down. And you know, would you be open to? Do you think companies should be asking for plant tours and visits into some of these facilities?
Yeah,
do you think that's where a lot miss?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. You know, I mean, press checks and plant tours. That's the peanut butter and jelly. That's symbiotic with what it means to be a printer. You know, I love nothing more than having a client in the plant and showing them, okay, you know, this is an 8-color press. Oh, what does that mean? You know, it's a perfector, or it, you know, has UV printing versus conventional ink. What does that mean? You know, and there's clients who love it. There's clients that don't have enough time and they trust that the printer knows what the printer knows. But man, it's so fun to show people the production process, to instill confidence, but to show them the hard work that goes into it. It's not just you know, slapping some ink on the box and here you go, right? There's a lot that goes into it, and an incredible amount of folks that work very hard on this stuff all day, every day, and seeing where they do their work's pretty special. You know, I grew up, like I said, it's been a family business. My dad's been in printing for 55 years. He owned a print facility in the 70s and 80s, and that was my babysitter. I'd go there, so the smell of printing presses and ink is something that just takes me back to my childhood, and there's something really cool about that.
I think that's a big thing, is whenever we can visit a client facility production, it's just, it makes you understand the culture more, but really you understand their business, you understand their needs. And honestly, sometimes it validates whether it's a good decision to partner with them or not, due to certain things in place, right? So let's wrap it up. And you know, we're coming near the end here, and it's been an awesome interview so far. Really grateful that you've been able to talk on cannabis packaging here. But let's talk GPA then for a second while we're wrapping up, and how people can get in contact with you. But before that, so what types of companies, like if you're listening to this and maybe you're in cannabis or you're in packaging and you're not even in cannabis packaging, like what type of companies should reach out to you or GPA Global or the Cannabis Packaging Division to see if they can be, or see if your team can serve and support them?
Yeah, no, great question. I mean, look, we work with everybody. You know, we're non-discriminatory. I don't care if you're a startup or if you're a multiple state operator, an LP, you know, servicing the Canadian sector. We're here for you. What we do love is that I think we're very uniquely positioned to support high growth brands. So really love working with folks who are vertically integrated and have operations in multiple states, because they could really use our services. I think we're a great partner for that. But we also love working with that brand that's just starting up in Los Angeles and needs all the graphic design support and needs the structural design support. And really we get to be the educator. So honestly, if you're in the cannabis sector and you're looking for a good partner and you're taking this for real and you're in it for the long haul, not just trying to turn and burn, we're here for you. We're really into long-term relationships. Make a lot of money the first time you run a job. But we learn efficiency over time and we perfect packaging items. And, it can be really mutually beneficial to work with a client for years because you really start to work together to reduce waste and time and communication and just really start to hyper focus on perfecting.
So do these companies, when they want to work with you, do they have to have the whole entire, like, this is what I want designed? Or do they come to you and say, hey, I have this big brand and it's grown from X to X. I'm really looking to take it to the next level. I need some custom packaging. But Jesse, like, I am not that way. Like, I don't have my own internal team. I have orders. Can you help me with that? Like, how does that work with you guys? Do you have a team that can support that?
Oh yeah. A, B, C, D, and all the above. I've had folks come up to me and say, hey, I'm starting this company and here's a sketch on a cocktail napkin. I think what do you think? Can you make it happen for me? And then, a couple weeks later, here's a branded logo that, they've chosen based on some designs we give them. Here's some renders of what some packaging could look like. Here's some guidance on what we're seeing that's popular in the market, even influencing their product decision making. We've got a 40-person design team in Asia. We've got a robust, I think, 20 or 30-person design team out here in the States, including graphic designers, structure designers, pre-pressmen. I mean, globally, I want to say we probably have, 300-400 folks on the design and creative side. And then on the planning, manufacturing side, there's a strong 2,000 of us now. So, we're here to support folks, who are just starting. Again, we got in early with Ring Doorbell, Owlet Baby Care, a gazillion of smaller companies, Casamigos before they sold to Diageo, and then get to service those folks after they partner with Amazon or a Diageo or the like. So, we're here for the big players, the little players, and everything in between. Just people who need good packaging and they're in it for the long haul.
So from what I hear, and I can attest, Jesse's a really good dude. And he will take care of you. And that's from personal experience. And what I will tell you is, I think from what I'm hearing is, at least, even if say you have a product that's not cannabis packaging specific, but you like what you hear from Jesse, you're like, hey, this dude sounds pretty trustworthy. I would like his feedback. So if they came to you and they're like, hey, I'm not looking for cannabis packaging, but I'm looking for some sort of like, could be molded fiber. It could be a paper and pulp product. It could be another form of a box. Maybe it's not for vape boxes, or maybe it could be, hey, somebody's wanted to sell DVD boxes again, right? But would you be, so if somebody comes to you, or do you only want people to come to you in your organization for cannabis packaging, or is it, hey, come to me for any service and support, and we can see if we can point you in the right direction?
No, look, I mean, I'm looking at the camera, right there's a good buddy might start a company called Liquid Death, right? This water brand. So we wanted a coffin nightlight, that lights up for bar backs. And, I think over here you can barely see it. Oh, it's over there.
Oh, I see the Liquid Death.
A Travis Scott bust for his Astroworld.
Tour. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, we'll do anything, and we do produce packaging for everything. Like you were mentioning earlier, cannabis is just a vertical that we service, and it's something that's growing and we're incredibly excited by, but hard pressed to say it's certainly not the biggest division that we service or market sector. And whether it's me, I work with some amazing colleagues that I would pass it along, say, hey, I got this bottle of wine. I run a really nice collector's edition box. Great. I'm going to introduce my boy Martin, who really focuses on that sector. Hey, I really want to display for my headphone company. Great. I'm going to introduce you to Carmack. He's the display guru, especially when it comes to consumer electronics, right? We have this great organization with, industry specific experts. And I've just been so lucky to earn my way and grow into the role of being the cannabis packaging division, subject matter expert.
And that's important. And that just goes back to the 5-10 minutes ago when Jesse was going through all these questions, and what you could learn about your partners is like, hey, they're just not siloed into cannabis packaging like we hear. It's a global, which sounds like a couple thousand individuals all across the globe.
Yes, sir.
Multiple countries creating jobs. and serving the always recession-proof packaging space. Well, let's end it with this, Jesse. So somebody's watching this. Obviously, they see your name. If they're watching, if they're listening, it's Jesse Dixon. Where can they find you? How can they get in contact with you? They're like, this guy's awesome. I want to see if they can quote my business out. Or better yet, hey, I just want to talk with this individual and get some perspective on maybe my relations with my partners, my business, right?
Well,
How would they get in contact with you?
Always email strategicpkg@gpaglobal.net. So that's strategic and the letter PKG at gpaglobal.net. Visit gpaglobal.net. There's always contact forums, or we have a cannabis specific website, gpacannabis.com. Or sorry, gpaglobalcannabis.com.
And I did see, though, for those that are on Instagram, that you guys do have a GPA Cannabis Instagram.
Yeah, look up GPA Cannabis on Instagram. There's probably a million. I think it's so hard not to be able to find people these days on the internet. So
and if it's not, here's the thing. That's when, quick sidebar, if you're hiring somebody or you're bringing them onto your team and you're like, I can't find them on anywhere. Like, is this their name? Because then you type it in, their name on Google, and you're expecting to be like, you're seeing like a news article like from like 3 weeks ago, right? Yeah. And they try to take it off, but you don't see anything. And you're like, oh man, what's going on here? Are they real? But is that their name? But no, so follow Jesse for those that are listening. And if you are watching, in the show notes, we're going to have, we'll tag Jesse, his website, learn about GPA Global, and how you can get in contact with them. So overall, to summarize, the audience learned a lot today, how to break into cannabis packaging, what you should be looking at if you're currently in cannabis packaging, but also realizing we're all in the packaging space, right? Yes, just sounds like that, GPA and your team is looking to dominate this space and continue to grow. And, man, what an awesome interview. Well, thank you, Jesse. Appreciate it. And we will talk soon, my friend. All right.
Dude, I really appreciate it. Thank you for taking the time. And I'm honored to be here. And I'm starting to consider you quite a good friend, man.
Man.
And thank you so much, man. I
appreciate it, dude. All right, Jesse, we'll talk to you.
All right. Take care, man.